What are hydroponics and controlled agriculture? What are the downsides to vertical farming? What is the value in intentional partnerships? If you'd like to find out, then you're in the right place. Welcome to Between Views. I'm your host, Ali Koski. This podcast aims to cast light on and connect you with inspirational people, identify them as potential mentors in your journey, and share their wisdom and stories with the world, all the while learning about early business and its dynamics. In this episode, we converse with Wayne Ford, CEO at Vertical Patch, about hydroponics, building partnerships, and the beginning of Vertical Patch.
Looking to try and change that.
Yeah, right. What's hydroponics?
So hydroponics is the use of water to transport your nutrient. So
all the nutrients are in the water in hydroponic
soluble. So that's how we get to the medium where the plants grow and the plugs are. So
I feel like that was what the Aztecs and the Incans and stuff used to do.
Yeah.
I think when they landed, they had a lot of swampland, so they had to learn to grow almost directly into the water in some way. They had like rafts. Is that similar to hydroponics?
It is a big part of the. It's the use of water to get the nutrient to the plant roots. The difference with hydroponics is you've got to be really careful, because even with soil that is really boggy, in the case of the Aztecs, you get a lot of leaching and it just doesn't get to the roots of the plants, or it's so soluble it gets such low quantities. So the idea that we're trying to create is understand exactly what the plant's requirements are through soluble nutrients. And we can do that because we can see the growth rates, how quickly the plants are growing. If they come up with a little bit of a yellow tinge, we're like, something's going on with the nutrient, we're too high in potassium or too high in nitrogen. So we can dial that up and down as well. So it's getting a little bit, it's getting really high tech in that we're able to dial some of those chemical requirements up and down.
Wow, you can match it perfectly as to what the plant needs.
Yeah.
So does that require you to be watching the plant pretty consistently and checking to see if anything's changing? Like, is that like a daily process?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're doing that all the time. But again, we don't get too carried away with it. I mean, we can put these, some of the farms, put them on an autopilot sort of scenario, and 12 days later we'll get microgreens. But it's just good farming to actually always continue to monitor, what you're doing.
Yeah, of course.
But theoretically, some of these automated farms can operate without people being inside them. I'm a little bit doubtful of that, because we've been doing it for a while now, and you still need people. You still need, that human touch. And even with AI, we're currently working with Western Sydney University to actually do photo imaging of our plants. And once the spectrum of colour of that plant changes from what's called our perfect standard, it would theoretically give an alert to say the plant leaves on that grow tower number 5 is changing outside the spectrum that you need it. You've got to go check tower number 5 to see what's going on.
Oh, wow.
So it could be that you've got a blockage in tower number 5, or could be that for some reason it's not getting the nutrients down, which is great. But I mean, that's available now to us. But again, you still need people to do that. And it just helps the whole journey of how to get the better plant coming out the door.
So how does a hydroponic setup work? Is that a big question?
No. It's a good one, because essentially what we're doing is we're rotating. We call it closed loop of water and nutrient. So you're thinking of as a dripping hanging basket. You've got a dripper at the top of that basket that's giving that basket and that plant enough nutrient and water without absolutely saturating it. You don't want it sitting in water. And the idea is you then take the water that drips out of the tray and you put it back into your nutrient tank. You can filter it, put it back into your nutrient tank, make sure it's got the right nutrient mix again, and then you put it back into the dripper. So we use, on average, about 96% less water than traditional farming.
Oh, really?
Which means
I was
because
just thinking it would have taken more water to do it.
No, because we have a completely closed loop. The water doesn't get evaporated, so there is some evaporation at the leaves, but because we have this really closed circuit of water, when the water comes off the plant, it actually goes into a closed tube, and that closed tube goes through the irrigation drainage system and then back into the nutrient tank. So we're doing very little top up of that tank apart from what water the plant may take up. And so there's really no loss. But whereas traditional farmings, you can put water out on your garden beds today, right now, and in the sun it gets evaporated.
Yeah, true.
The plant's got no chance of taking that water up. Whereas with our plants, we don't have that problem. And as I said, about 96% less water than traditional farming to grow. So that's why a lot of countries that are affected by hot conditions, the United Arab Emirates, as a case in point, are getting right into this controlled environment agriculture.
Right, they'd need it.
Yep.
I saw a video the other day online, actually. I think my Instagram knew that we'd been chatting somehow, and it started showing me all these hydroponic setups. I think after you describe it, I'm pretty sure that's what I've been shown. And it showed me a picture of this one in Abu Dhabi. I'm pretty sure they've just got these big warehouses. They look super neat and tidy. All the vegetables are perfectly green. It's kind of like, it doesn't remind me of what nature looks like. It's very much so like a food creating environment, because it's much different to going out to a patch and getting soil all in your hands. But it sounds like you're saving on space and time, and you're gaining flavor, and there's a lot of positives to all of this. There's a lot of symbiotic relationships between you and other businesses that you wouldn't expect you'd be with. So what's the downside? What's the catch? Is there any?
Well, we don't think there is. I mean, certainly the ones that have cropped up earlier in the whole controlled environment have had some struggles. And a big part of that struggle was they were using a lot of what's called venture capital money to invest in their farms. And a lot of it was based on the high tech. So they wanted to see robots everywhere.
Yeah, right.
Which is great. It's a good, it's a real futuristic look at it, a real, an interesting frame of saying, what could agriculture actually look like? I think some of those haven't been that successful because they went too much onto the tech. And what we've always looked at is you use tech to an advantage. It doesn't have to be the be-all and end-all. And so some of that tech that we're using, we think is enough tech to give us the advantages without going overboard, because the tech's also very expensive. So to set up some of these farms, you're talking over $1 million.
Oh, wow.
And that's a lot of money that you've got to pay back to your investors before you even start turning a dollar. So there was a lot of money that was expended in the early days of controlled environment on that as really high-tech projects. And the problem with that is it's really difficult to get that back. And so we've learned a lot of the mistakes from those and said technology is excellent, but let's not go crazy with it. Robotics is really good, but again, let's not go crazy. We think we've got a system which actually works really well with robotics. Just like in some of those other versions of vertical farms where people have to travel long distances to get to the far end of the shed and the top of the roof, the same happens with a robot. You've got to get that robot to that top section. We have got the farm coming to either the people, and we can replace those with robots. So I think we've sort of tried to get that better balance of not too much capital versus let's make sure whatever we're growing has got enough what they call unit economics. We're making enough money out of what produce we're creating or producing to give us that return. And that's always a difficult thing to do. So we've said to a lot of our providors and people we're not going to do these type of lettuces because you can buy those in the markets for a really, exceptionally low price.
Mm-hmm.
We're never going to match that. So we've said, but that thing that's a little bit fancier and it's costing $15, we think we can grow that for $12, or we can grow it for $8,
Right.
which means because we've cut down the transport, we also cut down on food wastage. Food wastage is a huge problem in that you can have 20 boxes of peaches, and even by the time it gets on the shelves of the grocery store, you might have lost 10 box, half of that produce already because the produce is either spoiling in the box, and even when it's out on the shelf, you get spoilage as well. You don't get 100% success rate when
it gets like a mold, or there was a bug in one,
or someone's bumped it, or whatever,
crushed on the transport.
So the idea there is this food wastage, and even then, you've heard the stories of it's not the perfect banana. Sorry, that goes into the food waste. We're saying, look, most of our products have got really high quality to them because they've had little interaction, little transportation, and we're picking it as fresh as we possibly can.
So you can kind of make better promises.
You can. And from our perspective, our perfect customer is someone who comes to us and says, hey, look, in 3 months' time, I need 20 boxes of this particular leafy green. Can you grow that for us? And we go, yep. How much quantity do you want? I want, 60 boxes of that. No problem. We can do that. And we can do that all the time as long as we get a little bit of time to know that we can grow it. And then we can reliably grow that for them week on week on week on week. And so that to a providor, that to a restaurant, that to a large catering group is gold. Wow, you can guarantee me that you can get me this produce year on year, month on month, week on week. Yep.
Well, that type of farming does a lot for restaurants too, right?
Yeah.
Like they now don't necessarily need to have a seasonal menu.
Yeah.
They can have, if they wanted to, a standard menu that they stick with, which I don't know if that's the best thing ever for a restaurant. I feel like the seasonal menu is what people love. Like now it gets warm, you want pumpkins and soups and all that kind of thing.
You will still get that. I mean, we're never going to grow pumpkins indoors. I mean, it's just not viable. Pumpkins take up a lot of space.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be that seasonality to a degree. What we're saying is some of those products that you would normally get. Now, avocados is a classic case. Even 20 years ago, you might, at one particular point in time in the season, leading into summer, you would get avocados because they'd have to come down from Queensland and there's your avocados. But they'd only be there for a month and that was it. Now you can get avocados year round, and that's because there's so many different parts of Australia that grow avocados.
Yeah.
And if it's not growing in Queensland, it'll be growing in Adelaide or South Australia, look, I'm not an expert on avocados, but I'm just saying you're actually getting a greater range of the climatic conditions across Australia that can grow different types of fruit and veg. But it does mean you're still transporting them long distances. So we're never going to be able to grow stone fruit or anything growing off trees or big product like potatoes and stuff like that. We can grow it, but it takes up way too much space.
Yeah.
So we're looking for those products that we know that we can grow that are of that. Leafy greens is probably a good variety. There's a whole bunch of indoor farms now that are doing strawberries.
Yeah.
A lot doing the vine-ripe tomatoes, cucumbers, those sorts of things, those little baby cucumbers as well. Again, a lot of those are in protected cropping, not necessarily in controlled environment. Protecting cropping is just glasshouse, but they're still impacted by things such as adverse weather conditions as well. But very successful in doing that. So what we're saying is a lot of the stuff such as leafy greens we can do year round, and it's not based on any seasonal requirement. So you'll still get those seasonal fruits and veggies, which you'll still be able to do from a restaurant.
Can you grow anything in an aquaponic setup, or are there some things that just need soil? Like, could you grow a tree in an aquaponic setup if you're running long enough?
We've grown grapes off cuttings.
Okay.
Look, as much as it sounds like it's just in water, you still have a medium. And in our case, we use everything from cocoa peat through to hemp.
Oh, the hemp you showed me before at the bottom of the
microgreens.
The microgreens packet.
Very, very small. So it's, think of 10 mil of hemp.
Yeah.
That's what we grow.
So plants do need to be in something. Their roots can't just be free in water.
Yeah.
Okay.
They need to be able to have germinated in something and their roots to attach to something. And then once you've got the roots, you're okay. So in the hemp, it's a really good product. The reason why we like that for the microgreens is the chefs like to just get their scissors and along the bottom of just above the roots and above the soil line, they like to trim it, and that's where they use the whole microgreen. With our competitors, they actually grow it in soil. But the problem with that is you actually get the gritty bits of the soil mixed in with the herbs. There's nothing worse about to chomp down on some
dirt
and you get a bit of dirt, that sort of stuff. We don't have that problem. So it does benefit by growing in these other mediums.
Yeah, right. What were the other ones? Hemp and then...
So we use a cocoa peat. Cocoa peat's a byproduct of coconut trees.
Yeah, it's what you grow mushrooms in usually, isn't
You can grow mushrooms out of it. Mushrooms also grow out of sugarcane mulch and a lot of wood byproducts as well.
Yeah.
So, and it's also coffee bean. You know a lot about coffee beans. You can use the coffee extracts to grow mushrooms out of as well.
Oh, really?
So I think you've got to have a balance there between a whole range of different products. You just can't do it out of one product.
Yeah.
So, mushrooms is an exciting crop for us to go next. We're always looking at the next crop. And we've just about to partner with a Singapore group who grows a white mushroom. White mushroom.
I was like, whoa, revolutionary.
A white strawberry.
Finally.
A white strawberry.
A white strawberry, wow.
And this strawberry...
I would just think that it wasn't fully cooked yet.
No.
It's raw.
It seems that way, but this thing is spectacular in flavour. It's a particular variety of strawberry, very hard to grow outdoors. So it's, this very particular little strawberry that doesn't like external conditions getting too variable.
There you go.
So in our situation, it's growing really well on a Singapore vertical farm, and they're really keen to help us on that journey.
Does that kind of strawberry start green and then turns white? Is that how?
I don't know for that variety, but of course most other strawberries start white and go red. And again, some of the varieties of strawberries that you would normally get, if you remember the strawberries, if you grew them in your backyard, they have this really intense sweet flavour. I don't know how many strawberries I bought when I bought them from the grocery, and they just don't have the flavour that you would have from a normal homegrown.
No, they're so much different.
And again, because of that transportation.
Yeah.
So they've generally been picked in a pink colour to a red colour. And by the time they get to you, there could be quite a few days.
And from what I understand, strawberries are covered in lots of pesticides usually because there are a lot of bugs and things go for them. Is that how it works?
Yeah, there is. So having it in a controlled environment does help immensely.
Yeah, because you don't need to use them as much, right?
I mean, just birds and, those things with four legs also tend to get stuck into them as well. So that's why a lot of strawberry farms are netted, but that's a massive expense.
Yeah.
So having it in a controlled environment does limit that. You will get some pests, but you won't get the four-legged variety unless the door's left open or whatever. But as far as the other form, it significantly reduces the impact of pests and fungicides getting into your product.
Okay.
So, there's lots of different varieties of strawberries, and you just won't see those varieties in the supermarkets because they don't transport well. They have a high spoilage rate and so forth. So
with something like vertical patch, could we potentially start to see them in supermarkets?
Well, no. Well, look, we never say no, but look, our view is always that we think we can. Our products is really for the markets of restaurants, catering, and cafes, more along those lines, as distinct to selling some of that product. Although the Singapore partner that we're about to go into business with does sell directly into some of the supermarket chains, we have been in contact with a whole range of different, what we call boutique supermarkets. So they're not the big ones. They're the ones that you call your local grocer.
Be more like a Harris Farm sort of thing?
Yeah, something
even smaller than that.
Yeah, that tend to have a broader range of, tend to stock some more local products. They're the ones that we would possibly favour if we were to go into that range of selling. So, yeah.
Oh, nice. Well, all of this is it's such a big operation and there's so many things happening from what I can tell. But that kind of thing doesn't just start overnight. Where did Vertical Patch begin? Yeah. How did you end up here?
Yeah, that's
how far back should we go for this?
Look, everyone we've spoken to, we've travelled around the world trying to meet all of our mates and competitors in the same area, and everyone comes at it from a different angle. There are either farmers who got sick of traditional farming and said, there's got to be another way. There a lot of engineers have got into it, a lot of different finance, venture capital people have got into it. So in our case, my business partner and I used to work together in property industry. So we both worked for a large property group, or the largest property group in Australia. And I was head of the engineering and property services, but also the sustainability part of the property group. And he was finance. So we're actually a pretty good match. And he was finishing up with one area of his career path, and I was finishing up with one area of my career path. And we both looked at each other and we said, what are you thinking of? And he said, I've heard of this farming side of things where you do it inside controlled environments. And we both said, okay, let's come back together after about a month and see what we've come up with. So about a month later, we got back together again, and I said to him, what did you find out? And he said, well, I've started a small farm at a friend's industrial shed in a month. I went, what? What have you been? And so he'd already commenced the process of experimenting. What could we do to do an indoor farm? And I said, so this was just an experimental stage. That was in 2018. 2019 kicked around. We thought we could get this beyond just a little bit of a hobby idea, and created a space where we put the conveyor in and started experimenting with the different crops. And by 2020, we said, no, we actually think we could start selling some of our produce. Luckily enough, we came up with were able to partner with one of the largest restaurant groups, and they loved the produce that was coming out of the farm. It was still research at that stage. And they said, can you supply us with this? And we said, yeah, we can supply all those things, apart from we can't do grapes, we can't do strawberries right now, but happy to do those later. And so we're still with those guys. We still supply them with all of their what we call leafy greens, apart from their cos lettuce, which we don't do. And that's across all their restaurants in Sydney. So then we said, wow, this can be bigger than this. And then we started looking for other sites, and we secured the one in Sydney City. It's taken us 12 months to plan and design, and we're about to go through the construction phase of that. So that's nearly 16 months later. And then the Artarmon farm, as I mentioned to you, came up about a year and a half ago as well. And now we're actually producing out of that. So then who was our other next range of customers and doing that? So you're the seller, you're the grower, you're the manager of the company.
Thank you for listening to part 2 of our interview with Wayne. If you enjoyed what you heard, then please jump over to Vertical Patch and give them a follow, or check out their website. Secondly, if you listen regularly and want to hear more, then please help us out by leaving a star rating and comment, and we can continue to bring you more and more episodes. Remember to like or share it with a friend if it reminds you of them, and leave a review in the section below. Or if you really found the information valuable, you are welcome to purchase me a scrumptious cup of Make More Podcast juice at buymeacoffee.com/betweenviews. In other news, Between Views is looking for collaborators in Instagram, social media, product development, and marketing. If you want to join the team, then please reach out on Instagram. Thank you so much. Finally, if you know someone who deserves to be interviewed or just have some feedback, then send us an email at betweenviewsbv@gmail.com or message us on Instagram. Thanks again, and see you soon. Between Views.